This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Our Parshas Boy, we have the mitzvah of Tefillin. L'mantia Taras Hashem b'ficha k'vyad chazaka ha'itziacha Hashem as Yisami Mitzrayim. So we have a very interesting statement in the Gemara in Brachos about the mitzvah of Tefillin. The Gemara says in Masechta Brachos, Daf Yudalad Amar Beis Amar Ula Kal HaKoyrei Kriya Shema B'loi Tefillin Ke'ilu Meir Eidos Sheker Ba'atzmai. Anyone who wears who says Shema without Tefillin, it's as if he testified falsely Ba'atzmai. So Rashi says Ba'atzmai is Ribono Shel Olam. How are you testifying falsely against Ribono Shel Olam? Well, because you're saying what? You're saying that you believe in the unity of God, but you're not wearing the Tefillin. The Tefillin give eidos to the unity of Hashem. So it's like you're saying false testimony against God Himself. But there's a little bit of a difficulty. You see, the Mefarshim struggle. What does it mean exactly? As if you're giving false testimony. Ba'atzmai. Rashi has to be madche the Gemara that ba'atzmai means against Hashem. A little difficult. Ba'atzmai normally doesn't mean Ribono Shel Olam. Ba'atzmai, it's like a euphemism to Hashem. We don't want to say Hashem, so we say yourself. Others learn the Gemara a little differently. That it's as if you're testifying falsely against yourself. Why? Because you're saying ukshartam, you're saying you should tie, and you're not tying. You're saying v'hayila taitafa is beinei necha, and it's not beinei necha. The problem with that is, it doesn't say Kal HaKoyrei, the whole. It says Kal Kriya Shema. It almost implies the very first pasuk. Just saying the first pasuk of Shema without Tefillin is like you're saying false testimony against yourself. So we're going to try to explain that a little bit. And I think this week Hashem led me b'derech ha'emes to really an amazing explanation for this Maimer Chazal.
What about Ma'ariv? You say about Ma'ariv Krishna?
No. Oh, you can't. We don't wear tefillin at night. You're exempt. You're exempt. It's not as man tefillin. Okay. So we find in Shulchan Aruch very interesting inyan, and that is we know there's a chiluk between the tefillin shel rosh and the tefillin shel yad. Right? If I would ask you which has more kedusha, tefillin shel rosh or tefillin shel yad? Shel rosh has more kedusha. Why does shel rosh have more kedusha? Tefillin shel rosh, because it's 4 batim. The tefillin shel rosh has 4 compartments. The tefillin shel yad has 1 compartment. Very interesting. Why does the tefillin shel rosh? Okay, that's the halacha. They both have an equal number of parshios. They both have 4 parshios. The tefillin shel rosh and the tefillin shel yad both have 4 parshios. The tefillin shel rosh has 4 batim. The tefillin shel yad has 1 bias. What's the reason for that? Why does the tefillin shel rosh have 4 batim and the tefillin shel yad only has 1 bias? So we have an amazing statement from the Matei Moshe. Who's the Matei Moshe? Rav Moshe Mas, the student of the Marshal. Okay, Marshal is one of the greatest poskim of the Achronim. The Matei Moshe writes.
Which century was that?
Number 3.
V'achar shenesatif b'tzitzis yaniach tefillin. After a person put on tzitzis, he should put on tefillin. V'yichavein b'hanachasan. You should have in mind when you put it on shetzivanu hamakayim la'aniach dal parshas elu, that God commanded us to put on these parshios. Sheish b'hem yichud shemai. It has the unity of God's name. V'yitzias Mitzrayim. It has the Exodus of Egypt. Al hazroya keneged halev, on the arm opposite the heart. The al harosh keneged hamaychan, on the head opposite the mind. Says the Matei Moshe an amazing thing. Inami. You know why we put tefillin on the arm and on the head? Al hazroya keneged chush hamishus shetala b'yad. The reason you put tefillin on the arm is corresponding to the sense of touch. Which aver in the body primarily senses touch? Yeah. The hand, the arm. That's why there's only 1 bias in the tefillin shel yad. Because in the yad you only have 1 of the 5 senses. But in the tefillin shel rosh, how many batim are there? There are 4 batim. Why? Keneged the other 4 senses. the al haroish keneged achushim shabroish. You wear tefillin on the head, corresponding to the senses in the head. Chush haros, the sense of sight. Chush hashema, the sense of listening. Chush hareach, smell. Chush hatam, taste. Ukenegdam, and corresponding to these four senses, yesh daled batim b'tefillin shorosh. You have 4 batim in the tefillin shorosh. An amazing thing. Rabbi said, we have 5 senses. You have sight,
sound,
hearing, smell, taste. You have 4 senses where? In the head. So you put on the tefillin shorosh, it has 4 batim. In the arm you have 1 sense, touch. Touch is in the yad. That's why there's 1 bias in the tefillin shel yad. What's the message? Says the Matei Moshe.
Can I interrupt you for a second? If the rush is more important than the yad, why don't we put the rush before?
That's right. That was
The
going
art?
to be my
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Because the Torah says not to. It says, "Ukshartem la'ois ayadecha,
The sequence. The
So if
sequence.
the Torah puts it that way, then now the
Then-
one on the arm
No.
should be more important.
Malin b'kodesh ve'im maridin." You go up in kedusha. Not everything that comes first is best, right? Because otherwise, then a mosquito would be more important than you,
Because you okay.
right?
You can, well,
That's what the Gemara says.
Wait. The Gemara says you were not supposed to be born. Wait a second.
Huh?
The Gemara also says that you're not supposed to be born. You're already there.
No.
You're
So the
already here.
The Gemara
Guy-
says
guy
that
survived that.
everything was created before man. Why? Achron chavav. Yeah. So the amazing thing, you have 5 senses. You have 1 sense in the arm. Keneged 1 bias in the arm. You have 4 senses in the head, corresponding to the 4 senses in the head. Why? V'zeh kedei sheyisayir adam. This is to awaken a person b'chamisha chushav, with his 5 senses. In other words, the purpose of the tefillin is to remind the person that he has to subjugate all his senses. Can't look at everything you want to. You can't listen to everything you want to. You can't smell everything you want to. You can't taste everything you want. You can't touch everything you want to. We're not just bound by the specific lavin in the Torah, but the senses need to be guarded. That's the purpose of the tefillin, which is an amazing thing. It's an amazing concept. You have 4 batim tefillin shalosh corresponding to the 4 senses of the head. You have 1 in the arm corresponding to the 1 in the hand. By the way, if you look in the El Yarabah is one of the later Achronim. He basically quotes the Matei Moshe without quoting him by name, word for word. That the reason for the mitzvah of tefillin, you have 4 batim in the roish, connected the 4 senses of the roish, and you have 1 bias in the arm, corresponding to the 1 bias, the 1 sense in the arm. Rabbi said, but it's very interesting, that these are all achronim, right? But we find the same thing in a Rishon. On this week's Parsha, the Rosh, right? The Rosh on Shas, he wrote a Parish on Chumash. You know, in the Chumash Hama'ar, they print on the back the commentary of the Rosh, and the Rosh says, look on the 3rd line, number 5, B'tefillin shel Rosh, Daled Parshios Keneged, Daled Hargasho Shabarosh. In the tefillin of the head, you have 4 parshios corresponding to the 4 hargashos of the head. Riyah, Shmiya, Reach, Dibor. So instead of what the Matei Moshe and the El Yarabah calls tam, right, taste, he listed a little differently. Speech.
sight.
Dibor. That's what the Rosh lists a little differently. Right? Not tam, Dibor. So, I don't know. I once saw in the Ben Ish Chai, he said a very interesting thing. Why is it that Hashem made us speak out of the same limb that we eat? He says, not a coincidence. It's to remind a person, remember how you ate that hamburger? Right? With such gusto. That's how you have to learn. It's to remind a person that when he learns Torah, he needs to learn the same way he eats. With the same enthusiasm. Okay? Interesting. And then, also the bias, you have 1 bias tefillin of the arm corresponding to the sense of touch. And this gives us a little bit of an insight into the Rambam. The Rambam writes about the mitzvah of tefillin in Hilchos Tefillin, Parak Daled, Halacha Chaf Hei. The Rambam says, Kedushas Tefillin, Kedushasan Gedoylahi. The sanctity of tefillin is very great. Shekozman shehat tefillin b'roisho shel adam. Because so long as the tefillin are on the arm, on the head, the azrayin on the arm, hu anav. Person is humble. The Rambam says that tefillin engenders humility. The Yarei Shamayim, it causes the fear of God. Ve'ino nimshach b'schayik, doesn't allow a person to be drawn after laughter, uvesicha b'tela, and idle chatter. Ve'ino imahar machshavos rois, doesn't allow a person to have improper thoughts. Ela mefana libay b'divrei ha'emes v'atzedek, it causes a person's mind to be diverted to that which is correct. Why is that? Why is it that tefillin has this great impact on a person? It makes a person humble, God-fearing, it steers a person. Because, like we're learning, the tefillin is that which influences us to control our senses. You have 5 senses, you have 4 in the head, 1 in the arm. And the tefillin is supposed to be subjugating them. Now, let's dig a little deeper. Okay, ready? You have 5 senses in the head, right? You have your eyes. 4, thank you. See? 4. You have your eyes, you have your ears, you have your mouth, you have your nose. What controls those 4 senses?
Your mind.
The brain. Says the Vilna Gaon, very interesting. The brain. What about the sense of touch? What part of the body controls the sense of touch?
The fingers.
One would think the
So
brain.
main also.
One would think the brain. But the Gra says it's the lave.
Heart.
Because that's the chief muscle. So the lave controls touch. The heart, the mind controls the other 4 senses. That is why, says the Gra, the tefillin of the yad is keneged the lave. And the tefillin shel rosh is keneged the mayach. But the Gra says even further.
The lave and the brain are connected also.
They're connected. Everything's connected. Yeah.
Yeah, try to live with that.
That's why tefillin is one mitzvah. I mean, you can, even though it's 2 separate, it's one mitzvah. Says the Gra, in terms of the lave controlling touch, all the touch of the body is controlled by the entire lave. It's only one lave. That's why there's only one bias in the tefillin shel yad. But in terms of the mind controlling the 4 senses, there are 4 different compartments of the brain. Each compartment controls a different sense. That's why you have 4 batim in the tefillin shel rosh. Take a look at the Gra Masechta Brachos. He says like this. On the 4th line, V'yadua sheba adam yesh hei chushim. You have 5 senses. Bedalid, and 4 of them ikaram b'mayach. They're primarily in the brain. Umimenu yavayu, they come from the brain. Uve'elav yashuvu, and the senses, the stimuli return to the brain. V'hachamishi, the 5th sense, shehu chush hamishosh, which is touch, hu b'chol haguf, is really in the whole body, right? Only your ear hears, your toes can't hear, right? But your whole body feels. You have touch in your whole body. Just like the brain controls the first 4 senses, the heart controls touch. That's an interesting idea to me. Why the heart controls touch? I don't know. But that's what the Vilna Gaon says. Now, says the Gra, even touch is further divided into 4 subcategories. There are 4 types of touch. There are 4 types of activities that are involved with mishosh, touch. Your hands could touch. Your feet could walk. Shimush is relations. And your whole body has sensories. So it's very interesting. There are 4 types of touch. Says the Gra, that's why even in the Tefillin shel yad, there's still 4 parshios. It's just in one bias. There's one general category of touch. It's broken down into 4 types, which is what? Which is walking with your feet, touching with your hand, tashmish, and the feel of the whole body. But these are four subcategories of mishush. But they all have one name. But the first four senses, they are divided by name, and then they have different regions of the brain, the Gra says, controls different senses. One part of the brain controls sight, one part of the brain controls hearing, one part of the brain controls smell, one part of the brain controls taste.
And one part controls touch.
Yeah, and that's in the lave. That's what the Gra says. Maybe ultimately, maybe it's also connected to the mind. That's what the Vilna Gaon understands it. V'chein l'riya u'l'kulam. That's why l'kach b'shal roish, in the shal roish shabaya numarim kesher amayach v'chushav, you have four parshios, each one placed in a bias meyuchad. But in the shal yad, which we show the connection to the lave, there are four parshios, but only in one bias. That's really an amazing concept. So again, you have four senses in the head, controlled by four compartments in the brain. That's why you have four parshas in Tzon Shorosh and four separate batim. In the Bayis Shoyad, that corresponds to touch. There are four aspects of touch. What are they? Ma'aseh Yadayim, Halicha, Shimush, Mishush. That's why you have four parshas, but only in one bias. Okay, now Rabbi Glatstein, the Gra in his commentary to Chumash, in Parshas Balak, look at number 9, the Adaras Eliyahu says an amazing thing. The word Maaseh, how do you spell Maaseh? Mem, Ayin, Sin, Hey, is really Rashi Tevos for the four types of touch. Maaseh is Mishush, Ayin is Asiya Biyad, Shin is Shimush, and Hey is Halicha. Those are the four types of Maisa. There are four types of Maisa. Mishush, Asiya, Shimush, Halicha.
Where's that?
That's in number 9. In the Adar Salyo, I'd say for Balak. Okay.
And you skipped over one thing, that you're supposed to wear the tefillin all day.
Yeah, I skipped that over. Why? Because we don't wear it all day anymore.
Why?
Why? Because we don't have the control over our body to make sure that we wear it b'kedusha. Because one is not permitted to wear tefillin if they have the need to go to the bathroom or to pass gas. And so nowadays we don't. We only wear it during the tefillah. That short amount of time we're able to control ourselves. Okay. Taking it a little further.
How come before Rashi's time they didn't put on tefillin?
They did.
They didn't put on tefillin at all?
They did.
Well, why is there?
Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam?
No, it's
That's a good question.
There were always Rashi's tefillin. The time in the Middle Ages, people stopped wearing tefillin altogether.
That's what I just said.
And then I forgot who it was.
Okay, maybe one time we'll have to have a shiur on that topic. Exactly.
Someone went from town to town, and I forget who it was.
Okay, it's very interesting. When we're talking about the five senses in a person, the five senses, the student of the Vilna Gaon was Reb Chaim Volozhiner, and his son, Rabbi Yitzchak Volozhin, wrote a commentary on his father's sefer. We know that Reb Chaim Volozhiner wrote the sefer Ruach Chaim on Perkei Avos. So his son wrote a footnote on the Ruach Chaim, and he writes this idea that the same way that the Rebbeinu Shalom has a lave, right? We say Vayinachim Hashem, or Hashem Einei Hashem, or Yom Nakam Belibi Yad Hashem, so to speak. That we are what we call an Olam Katan. We are B'Tselem Elokim. So all of these senses that we have are supposed to be used in emulation of Hashem, and we're going to explain that in greater depth momentarily. Look at number 13 for a minute. Rabbeinu Bechaye tells us. Okay, this is a Risha now, talking about the five senses. Okay, and this is really an amazing idea. Umineflois Yitziras Ha'adam. It is from the wonders of man's creation. Shepasach beheichal hazeh. That God opened in this great heichal. We are like a heichal. We are like a great edifice, or a great building. Hashem opened up in us chamisha sha'arim el ha'olam, 5 gates to the world. Imagine, if a person couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't smell, he would be like a building that's shut closed. So the ability to see, the ability to hear are like the windows to the world. V'hapakid el hasha'arim ha'hem, who is appointed to guard over these gates? Hem chamisha sho'arim, are the 5 gatekeepers, me'avadav hane'amanim, from his trustworthy servants. Who is this? Hasha'arim heim klei hachushim. The gates are the senses. In other words, the vessels of the senses. What are they? Elohein, ha'inayim, ha'aznayim, ha'af, v'halashon, v'hayadayim. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the hands. These are the 5 gateways to the world. If a person couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't smell, couldn't taste, and couldn't touch, he would be completely shut off to the rest of the world. He would have no existence. The only way, the only communication, the only transactions, the only back and forth there is between man and the world are through these 5 gates. The eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, and the hands. Otherwise a person has no existence. Who is appointed to guard over these 5 portholes, these 5 gates? The 5 senses. Chush ha'ra'os, chush ha'shema, chush ha'reach, chush ha'tam, chush ha'mishosh. Now listen to the following. If I were to ask you, which senses are spiritual and which are physical?
Physical is touch.
That's physical. Touch is definitely physical. Taste is physical.
Not speech.
Hearing is not. Hearing
Looking,
is.
what is it? It's not tangible. You can't put your finger on it.
Neither is smelling.
Smelling, what exactly are you smelling? It's not a tangible thing. Hearing, what are you hearing? What is the So 3 of the 5 are spiritual. 2 of the 5 are physical. Says Rabbi Machai, this teaches you, that should cause us to think a little bit. If the majority of our senses are spiritual, that means we need to devote the majority of our abilities to spiritual pursuits, and the minority to physical pursuits. If you look in Tanakh, there are senses that are ascribed to God. Einei God saw. Vayar Hashem, God saw. Vayishma Hashem, God heard. Vayarach Hashem, God smelled. Because these are spiritual abilities. We could ascribe them to God, even though there is no concept that God saw, and even though there is no concept that God heard. It's merely l'shaber ha'eizin, to make us understand. But nevertheless, we would never ascribe to God something physical. But never in Tanakh do you say, Vayamashesh Hashem, God touched. Never do you find Vayitam Hashem, God tasted. No, we would never say that. Because to ascribe a physical ability to God is foreign.
God spoke. God spoke.
God spoke. That's not one of the senses. According
to the rest it is, because he said.
The Rambam said that Zohar talks a Lushna, the people should understand.
Yeah.
So they're talking like the people talk to one another.
Correct. But even so, we don't say God tasted and we don't say God touched. That's Rabbi Machai. Look in number 13, page Kuf Sam Machai.
The finger of Hashem was the Malchus said.
The finger of Hashem. But we don't use the sense of what the finger is used for. We don't say he touched with his finger. Yeah. Hachushim hanechbadim halalu. These honorable senses. Kulam heim be'ever harishon. They are all in the primary limb, shehu mivchar mekaymes haguf elyonim, which is in the choicest place, and it's in its supreme place. In other words, very interesting. Of all the places of our body, which is the most prominent position?
The head.
The head. That's why the 4 most important senses are in the head. Movad chush hamishos, except for a touch, shehu miyuchad liyadayim. That is designated for the hand, right? As much as you could feel with your elbow, your fingers are much more sensitive. So the main location of touch is your fingers.
What about your toes?
Your toes also are called. Your toes also, but I think your fingers more than your toes. Yeah? Your fingers more than your toes. But from the fingers, the ability to feel spreads out to the whole body. You could feel with your head also. Primarily experienced by the veikos of one guf to another. 3 of the senses are spiritual. Chush hara'os, to see. Chush hashema, to hear. Chush hareach, to smell. V'shnai mehem gufanim, 2 are physical. Mehem, chush hatam, chush hamishush, to taste and to touch. V'chiva hachachma liyosam kain, God's divine wisdom compelled this to be. Kidei lalame, in order to teach us. Ki hakavana bebrias ha'adam, that the intention of man's creation, liyos chelek haseichel rav u'misgaber ha'chelek haguf. It's for the intellect to have dominion over the body. Who reigns supreme? The seichel or the guf? So Hashem is showing us who should reign supreme. You have 3 senses that are spiritual, you have 2 senses that are physical. For who shamar, this is what it means, right? He says, because these 3 senses are so honorable, we ascribe them to God. Vayar Hashem, Vayishma Hashem, Vayorach Hashem. But the 2 remaining senses, shehem gufnios, which are physical, we have never found them ascribed to God. You'll never find God tasted, you'll never find God touched. Says Rabbeinu Bechaya, we have to guard our senses, that any pleasure we experience, you always have to thank Hashem for any pleasure a person experiences with his 5 senses. Now let's go back to the beginning. The Gemara says in Masechta Brachos that anyone who says Shema without wearing tefillin is like being made Eido Sheker. So I'd like to offer a brand new explanation of that, and I think it's pretty good. Besides the 5 senses, we have 5 fingers. Rabbeinu Bechaya, in a comment, not in the Sefer Rabbeinu Bechaya, but it's brought down in the Sefer Shmuel Tova, which is not available anywhere other than the YU library. And luckily I didn't have to go there, because someone else went for me. In the Sefer Shmuel Tova, Rabbeinu Bechaya writes the following. The same way we have 5 senses, we have 5 fingers. Each finger is a servant of one of the 5 senses. Now listen to what he writes. Okay, you ready for this? This is amazing. When you're about to eat, and you have something on your mouth, how do you wipe it off? How do you wipe it off? With your thumb. The thumb is the servant of taste. That's what Rabbeinu Bechaya writes.
I use my finger.
No. You know why? You shouldn't use that finger. Because this finger is for the nose. That's what Rabbeinu Bechaya says.
We don't need to know.
Yes,
Okay.
pick the nose.
The Hamevin Yavin, yeah? The 3rd finger is the tallest and the widest. That's for touch. You feel with your middle finger. It's touch. It's the tallest and the widest.
That's true, but
The 4th finger, when a person has something in their eye, which finger do you wipe it with? Usually this
My
one.
index finger.
This one. And Rabbi said there's only one finger that fits into the ear.
You should even keep that out of the ear.
Says Rabbeinu Bechaya, the 5 senses are each have a servant. One of the 5 fingers. The gaidal is for the mouth. The next finger is for the nose. The middle finger is for touch. The next finger is for the eyes. The next one is for the ears. How do you say the 5 fingers in Hebrew?
That's right.
Zeres. This one is a zeres. Right? Why? Because you measure the zeres of the chayshen from here to here. Kmitza. Kmitza is when you do the kmitza. Yeah. The middle finger is the amma. The amma is because one from here to here is an amma. The etzba, you measure etzbos, and the gaida. Says Rabbeinu Bechaya, you would not believe this. The gematria of zeres, kmitza, amma, etzba, Goydel, is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. What do we do when we say Shema? It says, cover our eyes with the 5 fingers. What are we saying to Rebbeinu Shalom? We're saying, I subjugate all of my senses to you. Not only am I going to follow the Torah, I'm not going to use my eyes for what they shouldn't look at. I'm not going to listen to what I shouldn't listen to. I'm not going to taste, I'm not going to touch, I'm not going to smell what I shouldn't. The Gematria, it's on both Mamish, Oyoim, V'noira. Zeres, Kamitza, Ama, Etzva, Goydel, is Shema Yisrael, Adoi Shem Elokeinu, Adoi Shem Echad. So maybe we could suggest then, very simple. Anyone who says the first pasuk of Shema, and he's not wearing his tefillin, he's made Eidah Sheker. Because what's the purpose of tefillin? We just spent about 10 Mara Makayma showing the purpose of tefillin is you have 4 bottom in the head corresponding to the 4 senses. You have 1 bias of the arm corresponding to the 1 sense in the arm. The purpose of tefillin is to say to the Rebbeinu Shalom, I am subjugating my senses to you. So if you're saying Shema, the purpose of Shema is to say, Rebbeinu Shalom, I subjugate my 5 senses. I put my hands on my eyes and I say, I'm going to subjugate to you the Zeres, hearing, the Kmitza, the seeing, the Yama, touching, the Etzba, smelling, the Goydel, tasting, I subjugate to. So if you're not wearing your tefillin, maybe that's why you made Eidah Sheker Basi. Take a look at number 14.
Why do you not wear the tefillin on Shabbos?
What?
Why not wear the tefillin on Shabbos?
Shabbos is an OCU.
Yeah, Shabbos is an ice. Shabbos is nice. Take a look at number 14.
When somebody comes very late to Shiur, it's just about Zman Kriyas Shema. What does he put on film before he puts?
He doesn't have a choice. If he's not going to say, he has to say Shema.
So he does say Shema without film.
Yeah, but he should have woken up earlier.
Well, he should as well.
Right?
That question would come up.
Yeah. Look at number 14. Rabbeinu Bechaye beParshas Tzav. Bechachmei hateva kasvu ki kol echad mehatzbais mesharis lechush mechamesh chushim. Each one of the fingers are in service of one of the 5 senses. V'ha'agoydel mesharis l'kinuach haped. The thumb is for the mouth. V'hu shabai chush hatam, which has taste. V'hasheni, the second one, toichani cherichayim, is in the nose. Shabai chush hareach. Right? No one's recommending that, but that's what it's for. V'hashlishi l'chush hamishush. The third one is for touch. L'mashish b'chol chelkei aguf, to feel the body. L'fikachu aruch. That's why it's the longest one. V'haravi l'kaneach ayin. The 4th one is to wipe the eye. V'chamishu kaneach ha'ozen, to wipe the ear. V'hakadosh baruch hu bara ba'adam hei chushim. God created 5 senses. U'masa lahem chamisha mesharsim. And He gave 5 mesharsim. Says the Sefer Shmuah Tova, v'lachein Yad, the gematria of, you have to put in the word Yad. Yad, Goydel, Etzba, Ama, Kmitza, Zeres has the same gematria as Shema, Yisrael, Hashem, Elokeinu, Hashem, Echad, to designate and to subjugate all of one's chushim to Rebbeinu Shalom. So, in the period that we have now, Shovavim, it's a time for a person to focus that he is on guard, to make sure that all of these great guards, and all of these great Shiurim, these great gates that are open to the world. A gate is, right? What are you saying? Shoftim v'shoitim titen l'cha b'sharecha. Right, thank you. The Chidah says, Shoftim v'shoitim titen l'cha b'sharecha. You have to put safeguards on your Shiurim. What are the safeguards? You have to know what you're allowed to look at, what you're not allowed to look at. What you're allowed to listen to, what you're not allowed to listen to. What you're allowed to taste, what you're allowed to touch. And that's why when we say Shema, we put our 5 fingers on our eyes. We say, we subjugate all of our senses to you, and that's the purpose of the tefillin, and that's why the Gemara tells us somebody who says Shema without tefillin, it's ki'ilu me'ed eidah sheker ba'atzmai agun Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.